Hi, I'm Wendy Capewell and the host of this podcast, which is all about relationships, the one with ourselves and the one with others. My guests and I will be sharing our experience and our views over the coming weeks. So, on with the show. My guest today is Dan Reeder. He's a really interesting guy. He's got so much energy and I love talking to him. He inspires me a lot. So I'm going to introduce you to Dan Reeder, the rebound guy, and I hand you over to Dan. Introduce yourself, Dan. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having me on. I'm Dan. I've very recently left the fitness industry that I was in for 10 years. I was a personal trainer and I predominantly helped women fall back in love with their bodies, and it was predominantly around weight loss. So my mission after sort of coming out of the fitness industry was that I realised that I was skipping a very important piece of the puzzle, and I really want to enable people and give them the tools to fall back in love with themselves before they feel like they need to improve their body or they need anything external just to really embody self-love.
Mm. That's great, because I think there are so many people that are fixated on losing weight, but they're missing something, aren't they?
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes from a lot of social media and people not actually having real conversations about real struggles and allowing themselves to be vulnerable. And because no one seems to be allowing themselves to be vulnerable, it doesn't give anyone else permission to be vulnerable. And we live in this almost superficial world at the minute.
Oh, you're really speaking to me now. I've got a real kind of bug about it, because I do believe, the social media, TV adverts, magazines, anything, programs, the whole bit is just all about superficial stuff. I mean, you see programs like Love Island and it's all about that superficial side of it. They only put these hunks on, or gorgeous girls who are not even real. They're false eyelashes, plumped up everything. And it's creating a real problem, I think, especially for young people. I don't think it's always young people. I think older people are getting sucked into it as well.
Yeah, I think everyone seems to be getting sucked into it, because I think we live in a society now that tells us we need something outside of ourselves to be worthy of love. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And if that message is drummed into our ears so many times, we'll start to believe it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it becomes almost like, I kind of see it as it's almost like an addiction.
Yes.
You're feeding the reward system.
Yeah.
So you get that it's that you have that, all right, you get the false eyelashes, you get whatever it is, or you get the body, but actually it doesn't satisfy you. So you're looking for the next hit.
Yeah. I think a lot of what is out there at the minute, and something that one of my favourite authors, Mark Manson, talks about, is how we see things as a means to an end, rather than seeing them as an end in themselves. So, wanting to be good at singing purely because you want to be good at singing. Don't look at it as I want to be good at singing to have all the fame and the fortune and the love. It's looking at what you're doing and the intention behind that at all times.
Yeah, I think that's really true, isn't it? There's always that drive for the next thing.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you were in the fitness industry, you obviously came across a lot of people. Well, you said you worked with women who wanted to lose weight. So what made you change? What was it?
I went through my own rock bottom, for want of a better term. And as I was growing my personal training business, I was just in the process of opening my first small gym. And at this period in my life, I was also very early on to a new relationship. And I held the belief that if I could really grow this business and be financially successful, that she would love me more.
Uh-huh.
Well, I realised that that wasn't the case when I found out that she'd been speaking to someone else behind my back. That's when my whole world come crashing down. And as a result of that, I was no longer pushing my business forward. I was no longer focused on helping anyone because I couldn't even help myself. And that led me to become homeless. I couldn't afford my rent. I got into £7,000 worth of debt, and I had to actually move into my gym, which wasn't livable, to put it kindly. I was living on a little tiny black leather sofa. There was no heating. It was freezing cold in the winter, and I was literally at rock bottom.
Wow. That must have been a really, really difficult time in your life.
It was. Now, being able to reflect back on that period of time, I can see it as the biggest gift that I could have received. But when you're in it, it's so hard to see that. All you want is just someone just to come in and just save you. And I can remember one night I was, my dad used to invite me around for dinner on a Thursday night. And I went round his one night, we'd had dinner together, and he sat on the sofa. So we'd sit at the table, eat our dinner. He sat on the sofa. He'd have a couple of beers, and he fell asleep on the sofa. And I can remember it got to about sort of 9:30, 10 in the evening. And I had to be up at 5 o'clock, so I had clients at 6 in the morning. And I remember getting up, and I said bye to him, and he didn't hear me. So I carried on walking, walked to the front door, looked back at my dad, and instantly I just, tears come down my face. In that moment, I just wanted my dad to put his arms around me and just say, Dan, you don't have to go back to the gym. Stay here. Everything will be okay. I've got you. And in that moment, because he didn't say that, I felt so alone.
Oh, I can't imagine what that was like.
It really was the toughest moment of my life. And
yeah.
I recognise now that moment really taught me the most valuable lesson, and that was, if you don't love yourself and look after yourself first and foremost, you can't expect anyone else to. And that lesson, once I had that, I went back to the gym. I wrapped myself up in my hoodie, and I put a hat on and my jogging bottoms and wrapped myself up. It was winter. I fell asleep on this little leather sofa. The next morning I woke up and I really reflected on that thought. And from that point on, I knew that I had a bigger message to share than what I could share in the fitness industry.
Wow. That's a real kind of, hitting rock bottom. Yeah, absolutely.
I think so many of us are, when we're deep in the thick of it, we're trying to look for a way out, and that's completely understandable, because when we're at rock bottom, it's scary, it's debilitating. But once you come through the other side and can reflect on where you have been, you'll begin to realise that had to happen. But it's the process from that happening to build yourself back up, to get to a point where you feel whole again.
Yeah.
That's the process that I'm now teaching people.
Yeah. So a big lesson, and a big, it's quite a learning curve as well.
It is. It really made me realise that I put so many expectations on people to be this for me or do that for me, and in a weird way, I knew that I can't expect people to do that for me. So my way of dealing with that was being a people pleaser and making sure that I was doing all this for them. Because I weren't doing it for myself. I knew that I couldn't ask for help, because that's a sign of weakness in my eyes if I ask for help. So my way of coping with that was to just give. And it left me at rock bottom. And now I recognise it was the greatest gift that I could have ever received.
Yes. And I think I recognise that one about being a people pleaser, because that was me. That was me for a very long time. And I think that is something that many of us fall into. We want to be liked, we want to be loved, we want to be accepted, and so we try to be what we think others want us to be.
I think that's so true, because when we grow up, from my experience and the conversations that I've had, many of us feel like we can't say no to our parents. And we carry that throughout our whole childhood, teenage years, right through into adult life. And then we feel frustrated when people aren't giving us what we actually want, but we haven't allowed ourselves to even ask for it. No,
and I think that's an interesting one as well. That our parents, we always want we crave their love, we crave their acceptance, we crave their that they will appreciate us, that they will love us, and however bad that parent might be. I'm not talking about yours or mine, but just in general, I think people just crave that. They crave that attention, they crave that love, and it's somewhere between that idealistic view of what a parent should be and what the reality is. But we're always looking for that they'll love us despite whatever, that we'll get that, and if we don't, then that's, I think, sets us up for that people pleasing.
100%. I think that the funny thing is that when we're growing up, when we're children, we crave our parents' love so much, and if we don't feel like we've got their unconditional love, by the time we get to an age where we're looking for intimate relationships, we then put that expectation on like intimate partners. And then when we don't get it, we then put it into something else, and we're constantly craving this love from external places that actually sometimes it takes rock bottom to recognize that I need to give this unconditional love to me first. And then once you fully embody that, and I'm not saying that's easy, it's a constant choice, and you have to work on self-love. It's not just I love myself and that's it, full stop. You have to work through that day in, day out. It's a constant choice. But once you get to that point and recognize that you need to love yourself first, then you can really start creating and building the life and the relationships that you truly desire.
Yes, and I have this kind of quandary, actually, because when we talk about we have to love ourselves first, if we've not been shown love, how do we know what love is?
Yeah.
And I think, when you said working through it, it's difficult and it's a struggle, because love comes in different forms. And if we didn't get that love, if we weren't taught it, if it wasn't demonstrated by our caregivers, by those influential people in our lives, how do we know what it is to love ourselves?
Yeah. I think the only reference point we've got to begin with is we know what we don't want for love. Yeah. And then from that point, then you can really start looking at, well, what do I want? And it takes trial and error. Trust me, I've been there. It takes the knockbacks and falling down and allowing people to walk all over you, and all this stuff. It's hard. It takes a lot of work, but I completely hear what you're saying. If you've never really had that, it really is hard.
Because I think when you said trial and error, and I think that's it, because I was going to ask you that question, because for me, in my personal life, I made those errors. I was so seeking love that I would accept any attention on any, whatever condition, just to be accepted and loved.
Yeah.
And that meant that I was not in the best of relationships. I didn't have the best of friendships. I wasn't a very nice person at times, because I kind of went from wanting people to love me and like me to being very defended and frightened and not being able to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then I put this barrier, this brick wall came up. Actually, it was probably metal. And it was really hard. And I had this really hard exterior because there was part of me that wanted to be loved, but the other part wouldn't let people in. And I think I was quite a prickly I was a very prickly person. I don't think I know.
That is the real definition of loneliness.
Yes.
It's wanting to be connected to people, but not allowing yourself to actually open up and create that connection. I think one of my favourite analogies when you're in this and your self-worth is low and you don't really understand what it is to be loved is we're almost like a pet dog that hangs around the table picking up the scraps of food, just trying to get something and just holding on to any tiny little thing and running with that and going, no, they love me because of this. And then you ignore all the red flags.
Yeah, and I think that's how people get into abusive relationships, how they do get used, because they're seeing that as love, where actually it's a mistaken belief, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they're actually getting those crumbs off the end of the table and being shown something that is better than nothing, and they mistake it. And I've been in an abusive relationship myself because I just kept thinking, well, at least he accepts me, at least he, he's shown me some love and he does do nice things, and you just keep making excuses, but actually that wasn't really love.
No. The crazy paradox is that we believe that we won't get anyone better, and the truth behind that is we won't get anyone better because we believe that. So we embody that belief. And this brings me so nicely to my favourite message, which is instead of looking for the one, become the one.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's definitely a very, very good comment, a very good and a very good mantra to live our lives by.
Yeah. It's I think in that moment when you're so focused on looking to find someone to give you something, and then you can switch that to, well, what can I give me? Instantly, you become far more attractive. You then start repelling people that can't use you, can't take advantage of you, because you know that you deserve better and you deserve more. And then people that see that and see your worth, and they'll naturally gravitate towards you because you have that energy, and that energy is so attractive.
Yes, I'm totally with you on that one, absolutely. And I think that leads very nicely onto being able to say no.
Cool. Yes, I know this lesson well.
It goes along with the people pleasing, doesn't it? I've got a generous heart. I need to give. I've got to be kind to others. I've got to be selfless at the cost of everything else. If I say no to someone that I can't do something, they won't like me anymore. I won't be accepted. I won't have their friendship.
I think underneath that, we tell ourselves this story that I can't say no, and I've got to do what they want me to do because I don't want to hurt their feelings, when in reality, underneath that, it comes from a place of fear and lack, because we don't believe that if we have firm boundaries, that anyone will come into our life. And the reverse is actually the truth. But it takes, again, a lot of work to get through that.
Yeah. Yes. And the example I give is, when I say, for saying no, I think it's when we say no to somebody else, we're saying yes to ourselves.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think when we start thinking in that way, we realise that actually we're giving ourselves permission to be kind to ourselves, to give ourselves time, to give ourselves love.
Yeah.
We don't have to be unkind. We could say, well, I'm afraid I can't do that today, or unfortunately, that's not possible. Or, you know, if you're putting off an invitation that somebody sent you and you can't do it. I always think, I usually say to someone, you know, I'll acknowledge their need, and then at least they feel they've been acknowledged. Yeah. I realise that's important to you. However, I'm afraid I can't do that, but I could, and then maybe offer an alternative. Or sometimes you don't even need to. You don't even have to justify yourself, and that's the other thing we do, isn't it?
That's what
the reason why. Yeah.
I found myself when I started like putting boundaries into my life and my relationships and stuff. I found myself saying no, and then almost taking a step back and justifying my no instead of no, and then that's it. Full stop.
Yeah. And then you tied yourself up in knots.
Yeah.
Because you've left them with a little loophole.
Oh, yeah.
Where they can actually say, well, if you can't do that now, but you could, you know, they wheedle away, and you haven't said no at all.
No, you haven't. You end up saying yes anyway. You've just prolonged the suffering.
It seems we've been on similar journeys, Dan.
Oh, it does. I'm so glad we connected. There's so many similarities in our stories, and you're so inspirational. I just love our conversations.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. Thank you. But yeah, I do. It's really great. And as you say, with the similar journeys, and that journey of exploration is amazing. And I'm still finding it. I'm still finding there's another piece of that jigsaw in my life.
Yes.
That I hadn't recognised, or I didn't find, or maybe that piece fits, or maybe it doesn't, and it goes on and on.
I love little like times when I'm triggered, and I can feel like little bursts of emotion starting to come up my stomach, or like if something I can feel like, oh, I don't particularly like that, and then I love that moment, because in that moment you've got an invitation to really explore where that comes from and why, and then once you get to that, again it opens your eyes even further to, wow, this is another piece of myself that I didn't know.
Exactly. And were you ever at the point where you didn't get any of those feelings, or not?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because what happened, I certainly feel it in my body, but I know so many people, especially clients, who tell me, I don't feel it. I don't feel it. They're in their head, not in their body.
Yeah.
And trying to encourage them to connect can be quite tricky, because they don't want to go there. They've managed their lives by numbing those emotions, blocking them out, not going there, and then they just literally, I've dealt with that, or I don't need to look at that, but actually all they've done is numb those emotions, and they can't feel it in their bodies, and therefore they haven't got the signals to say what's right or what's wrong, or what's okay and what isn't.
Cool. I think I've been quite fortunate, obviously, with my background in the fitness industry for 10 years. I've always been very much in my body and about building my body up. And when these emotions come up, they were there, but because some of them were really uncomfortable and I didn't have the tools to navigate through them, what I turned to was something that has been a big part in my family's life, and is alcohol. I would turn straight to alcohol to just completely get away and run away from all them emotions that I didn't want to feel, instead of actually addressing them head on.
Yeah. And I think people find all kinds of things to support themselves when they're going through that. It can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be sex, it can be shopping, it can be a million different things that people, you know, it's an addiction in some way or another, but it supports them. They're there because they don't want to go there. And that means that they can numb their feelings, they can block it out temporarily, but it's always there. And
I think that's a lot of what life is about now. It's about not being present, because when we're present, then we can really start to create the life that we want. It's when we start holding on to the past or looking too far in the future, we're not actually living in the now. And we're running away and disconnecting from what the actual reality is right this very second. And so much of life is about that. It's, you need this to be happy, or You know, you need this holiday, or you need this partner. You need something outside of yourself. And the truth is, you don't. But that isn't a very sexy message to put on adverts and TV, is it?
No, it certainly doesn't sell their products, and the marketeers really know how to tap into people's being. I mean, they're very clever, and people fall for it time after time. Yeah. You know, marketing has become a science now. It's not what you need. It you know, just is throwing things at you constantly. You must have this. This is so much better than. Yeah. And actually, you get it, and it might give you a buzz for a few minutes, but then after that, generally, the chances are that your hair hasn't really satisfied that inner need, that inner satisfaction, that inner peace, that inner calm, has it?
We get that little instant dopamine hit, and then we're on to the next thing. I need something else now. It's like an iPhone. My iPhone contract ran out about 8 or 9 months ago. And I just kept the old iPhone that I had and weren't really too interested. And I thought, you know, it does exactly what I need. And then I saw other people putting on social media that they've got this new iPhone. And there was one day a few weeks ago, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get myself a new phone. And I rather than spending £20 a month, I'm now spending £50 a month. And in that moment, they got me.
Yeah. And is it better?
Not really. I mean, marginally, but not £30 better.
Yeah. Well, that's 360, 300, £400 a year, isn't it?
Yeah.
That you've spent on that. And we have to think about, is it worth it? And some people do find it's worth it, but again, it's really looking at ourselves, I think. Yeah. I'm not particularly materialistic, I have to say. There are some things that I do enjoy, but I'm not particularly materialistic. There's no point, really.
Give me a good coffee, a good book, and a walk in nature any day.
I was saying, I love that. I love events are far more important. If people ask me what I want for my birthday or Christmas, it's, well, let's go and do something together. Let's go to the theatre. Let's go and
create some memories.
Memories, exactly. Memories are far more important to me too.
Yeah, completely agree.
Oh, Dan, I've really enjoyed today. I hope the listeners have too. And your message, you said it earlier, I think the one thing that people can really kind of take away with themselves today, what is it that you want that they could actually start putting into action right this minute?
So my main message that I'm really getting out there is, instead of looking for the one, become the one. And a very simple way to really start moving forward and using this is to ask yourself this question. And I use it myself multiple times a day. And this question is, if I loved myself, would I? And then whatever you're thinking about doing or not doing. And that could be anything. It's for me, if I loved myself, would I go to the gym today? If I loved myself, would I eat better today? If I loved myself, would I say no to this person today? If I loved myself, and just always ask yourself that question.
I love that. Because it is that journey of being able to love ourselves, isn't it?
It is.
Because we talked about that, you know, how do you love yourself? How do you? And it is that asking that question.
Just a daily practice. And that question will enable you to really become conscious of your choices.
Great. So how can people get in touch with you? An easy way, because obviously all your details will be, you know, how will be in the show notes. But if somebody just wants an easy way of getting in touch with you, what's the easiest way, Dan?
So I'm very active on Instagram and Facebook, but predominantly Facebook, on my Facebook page, which is Dan, the Rebound Guy Reader.
Great. So Dan, the Rebound Guy Reader.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much today.
Thanks for having me on, Linda.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
Let's take care.
I hope you've enjoyed today's show and my guest. If you'd like to learn more about my guest or about me, then go to my website, wendycapewell.co.uk. So until next time, have a great week. Bye.